Guys, welcome back to another video, and today I want to share how I've been managing my backlog and finishing more games than ever before. I've always struggled with choice paralysis and getting overwhelmed by the amount of games I want to play during my existence on this planet ever since I was about 16 years old and got my first job. With that little bit of spending money, I bought up just about any game I was remotely interested in if I saw it for a fair price, and I still kind of do this today. Back then, it was always my dream to build up a library of games like many of my favorite YouTubers had. I loved the idea of simply being able to browse my very own shelves later in life and relive all of my fondest memories. Simply having that easy access to any game from over the years at a moment's notice seemed like such a pipe dream to me back then. And well, now it's my reality, not only thanks to the physical collection that I've built up over the years, but also services like Steam and, of course, emulation. However, I'd be lying if I said that having this many choices didn't feel a bit overwhelming at times. I often find myself feeling stuck, wondering what I should play next. What older games do I want to replay? And if I get past those roadblocks, sometimes the question even becomes, is this game that I'm currently playing really worth my time? Maybe I'd be having more fun if I was playing something else. And having those thoughts never feels good. That last part really got out of control for me during the year that I was subscribed to PlayStation Plus Extra, which, for those of you who don't know, is PlayStation's equivalent to Game Pass, where you can pay a monthly fee and have access to a digital library of a couple hundred games. It was pretty great to have this service when I was living in Australia and didn't have my physical collection with me, but once I got back to the States at the beginning of 2024, the service was honestly more of a source of stress than entertainment. I constantly found myself bouncing between titles that were being added monthly, but not really spending any meaningful time with the majority of them. All the while, I was afraid to find out what the next games to get removed from the service would be before I had the chance to play them. It just wasn't good. Eventually, I realized this and decided to cancel my subscription, which I will say has definitely helped alleviate some of that pesky choice paralysis because I no longer feel like a portion of my digital library has an expiration date, which in turn removed that unnecessary sense of urgency that PS Plus Extra was creating in my easily overwhelmed little brain. So that is my first major tip. If you struggle with choice paralysis specifically, cutting out services like PS Plus and Game Pass and whatever else is out there will help immensely. Then you can use the money that you save not paying a monthly fee for games that you might not ever even play, and put that money towards games that you can actually own and play whenever you want. Now, the next bit of advice that I have for you is to disconnect from the internet as much as possible. Lately, I've been trying to make a serious effort to spend less time on my phone. There is a common sentiment amongst many of the YouTubers that I personally watch that is how we feel like we enjoyed games more when we were kids than we do now. I think there's a lot to unpack with this topic, but one of the main things that's been helping me enjoy not only games more, but life in general, is leaving my phone in another room. I've noticed that when I don't have my phone on me, I am much more present in what I'm doing in general, which sounds so obvious, I know, but try actually doing it and it will change your life, trust me. Doing this has really helped when playing games though, because if you remember back when we were kids, video games were kind of seen as a distraction from life by the adults in our lives. But now, all of us young adults who grew up making our core memories playing games have these pesky little bricks in our pockets that are constantly distracting us from what we used to love giving our full attention to, which is playing games. So by ditching our phones, I truly believe that we can recapture a piece of that magic that we used to feel when playing games as kids. So to give you an example, here's what I do. When I get home from work these days, my routine has been to work out, which I stick to as many days out of the week as I can, go put my phone on charge in the bedroom, and then play Donkey Kong Bonanza. And let me tell you, playing this amazing new 3D platformer with no distractions or urge to pull out my phone and check Twitter every time I hit a 2-second loading screen screen has really helped recapture that magic that I used to feel when playing games like Mario 64 back in the early 2000s. Because back in those days, as long as our parents were allowing us to play games, there was really nothing that was going to take us out of that experience. We were locked in and just in the moment, and I think that's what a lot of us are missing these days. The other benefit of disconnecting is blocking out the noise of just everyone else online. Lately, I find myself less and less interested in hearing other people's criticisms and opinions of the media that I enjoy. I truly believe that a huge part of what made video games and other media feel so special to us as kids is that we didn't log into YouTube or Twitter and see hundreds of content creators calling our favorite games and TV shows buzzwords like flawed masterpieces and picking them apart for views and reactions. One of the first times that I consciously did this was back when Zelda Tears of the Kingdom came out in 2023. At the time, I wanted nothing more than to explore this world at my own pace without seeing any spoilers and without hearing all the noise of all the discourse that was surrounding this game and all the nitpicking and stuff. I just didn't want to hear any of that. Blocking out all of that unnecessary internet noise only added to the sense of adventure and discovery that I got out of exploring this altered version of Hyrule, and it was great. It definitely made my experience with this game way more memorable. Okay, so for the last section of this video, I have 3 pieces of advice here that all kind of fall under the umbrella of organization. First is self-control. Focus on 1 to 3 games at a time. Next is keep track of what you're playing. After that is remembering to take breaks, and by that I mean if you're feeling burnt out on a game, find a good stopping point and keep track of what you were doing in the game, whether it's a note to yourself or something, because you might just want to come back to it later like I do all the time, and I'll get to that in a second. So putting this all together, here's basically how I've been doing all of these things since 2021. First off, I keep track of every game I start on a Google Doc each year, and I put little notes next to the games like finished, dropped, or on hold. And we'll get back to this last one in a bit. I do generally try not to be actively playing more than 3 games at once. Now, of course, there are going to be times where I'm bouncing between maybe 4 or even 5 games, or sometimes more than that. But the more games I have in my current rotation, the more likely I am to end up dropping 1 or 2 or possibly all of them. So from my own experience, I'd say the sweet spot is 3 games max. Another one of my general rules of thumb is to avoid genre overlap. For example, if I'm playing an RPG, I won't start another RPG until I finish the one that I'm currently working on. This has helped me a lot, specifically with RPGs, which tend to be on the longer side. Back in my teenage years, I rarely ever finished any of the RPGs I started because I used to start multiple at once, which looking back on that is insane. And I would forget what I was supposed to be doing in one, and then I'd just lose interest and then just end up dropping both of them, and it was just a mess. I would do this all the time. What I usually do these days is have 1 RPG, 1 more action-focused game, and a 3rd game that can be pretty much anything, whatever I'm feeling at the time. I know it might sound weird to some of you that I have to limit myself in this way, but for me personally, implementing this has felt like the missing piece of the puzzle for why I was always having such a hard time finishing games. And that leads me to my next point that I mentioned, which is putting games on hold. Gaming wouldn't be very fun if I was forcing myself to play something simply because I felt like I had to finish it. That's why in recent years, I've been putting more and more games on hold and then coming back to them when I feel like jumping back in. I did this with a couple of games just recently, which I talked about in my previous video. One being Yakuza 3, which I started about just over a year ago, and the other was Ace Attorney Justice for All, which, believe it or not, I actually started around 10 years ago. These were both titles that I always knew I wanted to finish, but during my initial playthroughs, I reached points in both of these games where I wasn't really in the mood to play them anymore. So I put both of them on hold with the intention to come back to them at some point in the future. And since I did this, I feel like I enjoyed them so much more than I would have if I had forced myself just to get through them and cross them off my list during my initial playthrough. Recently, I've been trying to do this more often than just straight up dropping games when I'm not really in the mood to play them, and it helps a lot more than you think, because lately when I'm feeling that choice paralysis set in, I'll look back at my list of games that I've started this year to check if there's anything that I put on hold that I would like to finish before starting a whole new game. And not only does it help me finish more games that I started, but seeing that smaller list of games that I've started but haven't finished helps me narrow down my options when picking a game to play, instead of looking at my entire library, both physical and digital, and feeling like I have to choose something brand new, which can be, like I said, very overwhelming at times. So there you have my methods for how I've been managing my backlog. Definitely let me know what your thoughts are down below, and if you have any advice that I didn't mention here, definitely share in the comments. I really enjoy discussing this topic with all of you, so don't be shy. I want to hear what you guys have to say. And of course, if you want to connect with me on any of your social media platforms of choice, check out my link tree in the description. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.